Ready here to make some painting? I am. Okay. Hello everybody, my name is Michael Markowsky and I am going to be making a painting with you today. And specifically we're going to be painting actually a print by one of my favorite artists, Mary Pratt. Mary Pratt passed away recently in 2018. But lived a very full and interesting life, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we make the painting. So let's start getting set up. We, as always, I put my painting stuff away and get it ready on camera here so that you can see how I set up. Obviously, I've got a few canvases because we are going to be making lots of paintings together. I've also got a few smaller ones here. If I ever get the chance, I'm going to try to make some of these paintings beforehand for us. But, you know, sometimes it's nice to have a small painting. And I won't today, but there are times where I actually make multiple paintings all at once of the same painting. Because it's kind of nice to have a few paintings on the go so that if you want, you can kind of take a few different directions and have one painting be, you know, full color, one having more muted colors. So anyway, that's something that I'm going to show you how I do later on. So I got a painting, some brushes, some water, and some of my paint. And I've got my color wheel, and you'll see I've labeled it here with the different 6 colors that I'm going to be using. So I'll show that here in a second. Maybe I'll bring that up right now. So I'll just kind of show you here what I've done, in case anyone's interested in replicating something like this. So, for whatever reason, this color wheel or palette that I've bought only had 5 places here. So, and I'm using 6 colors, so it kind of makes things a little bit intriguing, but I've also just sort of divided a line here. I personally like having my yellow colors at the top of the color wheel, and then I tend to kind of have my warm colors on my left and my cool colors on the right. There's no reason why I do that whatsoever. You'll see if you look up color wheels online, you'll see some where the yellow's on the bottom or on the side, and the warm colors are, you know, there's no right or wrong way to do this. Although, I'm sure if you look online, you'll hear plenty of people who will tell you that there is a really important reason to do it one way or the other. I've never found one that has convinced me that it had to be done in one way or the other. Anyway, I got my canvas here. And again, I'm going to use a canvas board. I have actual canvases that are stretched on frames, but I find, why would I be using a canvas board? No particular reason for today. I'm sure there's a number of you who are using canvases that are like this, that are stretched over a board, you know, with the staples and like that. I mean, I could I guess I'm just for today. I just decided to use it. For a long time I did not like these at all. When I was in art school, we used them. Maybe that was my association. In art school, we painted a lot on these because they're really easy to carry around. If you're an art student and you got, a backpack, it's easier to put something like this than carry one of those larger frames. So I think maybe in my mind I just associated them with art school. And to be honest, you probably, if you're really getting into painting, you probably wouldn't really want to make a habit of using these type of things for finished artworks that you're going to sell, and primarily because these are kind of a cheaper material, right? So who knows what the actual cardboard is, because there's some kind of card in stock inside here, and a lot of artists are really concerned with the archival properties of their canvases. Meaning, will it last 50 years or 100 years or 1,000 years? I'm going to put some paint on here in a second, but I think the first thing I want to show you guys is, well, you know what? I'm going to show you where I found this image first of all, and then. So, oops, this image, let's go back here. So as I said, Mary Pratt is no longer with us. And so her estate is represented by a few different art galleries around the world. So this is the Myra Goddard Gallery in Toronto, which is a really good gallery. I've been there many times. And so this is where you can, I think I put the link is in the description below. So these are artworks that I think are available for sale in the gallery. I'm not sponsored by them. I haven't even told them that this is the image that we're going to be using. But maybe there's a few people out there who are going to get really inspired by her art and want to go buy the actual original. Because this is a screened print, and this is edition 75, meaning there's 75 copies of it. I don't know if the gallery has 75 or not, but anyway, if you wanted to get the original, this is what it looks like. So we are going to draw this on the canvas, and I know some of you are like already, what? That's pretty complicated. That's a complicated drawing to draw. And if you're interested, I did do a 40 episode how to draw series, which is on my YouTube page. You're on my YouTube page right now, so if you want, you can go check out those and do all the lessons. And I know there's a few people who are watching today's class who did all 40 of those lessons, so they'll have a little bit of an advantage for how to draw this. But don't worry, I'm going to simplify it, and I just assume that if you're watching today's episode, you've never painted before. Hopefully you've watched the first 4 episodes of this series, and that would help you a little bit, or well, a lot. So if you haven't watched those, that would certainly benefit you. But so I'm going to show you this is Photoshop that I've got running here. Let's see. Oops, let's collapse that. So this is the image. Where's my layers here? So we're going to hide a bunch of these. Oops. So this is the original image. Let me just spread this out here. And the reason why I'm showing you this in order to help us make this drawing is I've done a little sketch on top of here. So that will, so it's going to just kind of simplify things a little bit. So here's the original image, and here is my drawing of it. And I did this on my iPad, my iPad Pro, using Procreate, which is a drawing software, and the pencil, Apple Pencil. Anyway, this, again, may look, you're like, whoa, okay, this is pretty complicated. So we are going to not draw all of the complex detail in here, because some of that, for a lot of this, we want to save towards the end. Okay, so here, and I can put this back up for a second, and we'll kind of maybe, in fact, let's reduce the opacity of this here, just so, okay. So to make this drawing, and I think I've got a view here. Okay. So here's my overhead view of, there we go. Okay, so the first thing that you probably notice is you're like, oh, wait a second, this is a square image and I've got a rectangular canvas. What do I do? So it's up to you to decide. If you have a square canvas, you can use that. Obviously, I don't, so I'm going to show you how we can just adapt this. So the decision is, you could make this using the portrait format, which is longer on the sides than the top, right? So it's tall, or the horizontal or landscape format. Neither one is better or worse. You know, you could look at this and say there's a kind of a landscape here. We have a landscape of food, a foodscape. Or you could say I'm making a portrait of some food, right? I think I'm going to do this in the vertical format, the portrait format. But there would be no reason that this would be wrong. You wouldn't be doing anything wrong by doing it in the landscape version. In fact, it's so hard. I think I might actually do this, just because that way I might be able to get more of that shadow. Okay, so to help, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to divide my canvas in half. And look, I didn't even do a very good job of dividing it in half. It doesn't matter. I'm drawing probably darker than you would want to draw yourself, right? So you probably don't want to make these initial lines as dark as I am, because it'll make it more difficult to erase. But then let's say this diagonal line sort of looks like it is around halfway, maybe a tad higher. So if I make a little mark for myself, and then I say, okay, if this was a square picture, it would be kind of going up to here, right? And since this is longer, so I can decide, do I want it to go like this? That looks like pretty good. I feel like I got that okay. So if you're using a rectangular canvas like me, then you could just sort of continue it in that direction. Again, I don't really care that if this is a straight line or not. I'm going to cover this entire thing with paint, right? So any pencil lines are going to disappear. The next thing we want to do is obviously draw this shortcake, strawberry shortcake on the canvas. So how do I get that there? Well, in the original, right, if this was, let me see, I got a piece of white paper here. Big head out of the way. So in the original, which is, let's say, square like that, or where would it be, kind of like this, the plate goes almost edge to edge, or I guess the shadow also goes edge to edge. We have a little, if I'm painting a little bit bigger, I've got a little more room to play with, so I'm going to center it a little bit here. So I'm going to, let's say, mark out for myself, okay, this is going to be where the edge of the plate goes. And then let's say, because I want this shadow to, let's say, be, let's get the shadow in the same place. So I'm going to center this whole thing here. So the shadow is going to be there and there. And that means the plate, which is a little bit smaller, is there. Does that make sense so far? Okay. And again, it kind of looks like this plate is the top of the plate, if I carry it through, is right about in the middle here. So if I take this line down just so you can see what I'm up to, I gotta draw an oval that fits in here, right? And I look at that and I go, okay, that oval actually looks like it's a little wide. Maybe it should be actually closer to that shape. All right. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, I've got sort of a disclaimer that I'll come back to when we go full screen back here in a couple minutes. So here's the shadow. Okay. So maybe I'll just take a couple seconds. My purpose and goal for this painting, and really for all of this and the next 39 episodes we're going to do, is not to show you exactly the techniques that all of these artists have used, and it's not intended to be a master class for, you know, professional painters. This is, again, a beginner's painting class, right? So we're going to try to paint this entire painting in 1 hour, which, you know, is a tall task. So we're going to make some simplifications. We are going to have to make a little bit of sacrifices in order to get this whole painting made. So I think that's also really important to kind of make obvious here. Okay, if we go back to this, so we've got this plate, and then this is the reflection, and aka shadow, kind of below it, right? And then there is kind of another shadow coming off here, but if we got time to fill that in, we'll do that. The next thing we have here is the strawberry shortcake on there. And if you watch my drawing class, I kind of talk about looking for some shapes. And, you know, it kind of looks like we've got a bit of a triangular shape right inside here. Now, obviously, that's a super simplification of the image, but I think that helps us kind of get into the zone here, right? Because if we draw this triangle that's right in the middle of the plate, that kind of, we can look at that and make some comparisons and go, okay, well, the strawberry is obviously going to be at the very top, so I can draw this strawberry, and I'm not too concerned with the shape of the strawberry on the top. And then we've got this I don't know, whipped cream or something there. And then we've got the cake itself, which is this kind of blob form, right? So I'm just kind of softening some of those edges, you know, and I'm going to make, let's say, 2 quick little layers here. So that's just, that little layer would be, where am I here? The difference between these 2 areas here. And then we have some strawberries. We got a big one over here. We got another one over here. We got another one sort of hiding underneath, and another one on top. Right? So this is basically where we want to get to at this point in the image. Right? So we want to be able to try to quickly lay out, and right now it looks kind of very you know, it doesn't look particularly appealing as a painting right now, right? There's a bunch of weird lines on there. It's kind of, you know, it just seems a little bit disorganized. If there's parts I want to get rid of, it would probably be a good idea to erase those now, just so that they cause the least amount of problems when we're actually painting. So I'm just going to erase some of the lines that I don't need for my painting, right? So this initial kind of division I did between to find the center of the picture. I can get rid of that. And these edges of the plate I can get rid of. Now, potentially I could just leave all of that there, right? That since we're going to cover it with paint, I could leave it all there, but I've been drawing maybe a little bit harder than, hopefully I've been drawing much harder than everybody else is. I'm drawing harder with making darker lines just so that it shows up well on the camera. You know, after I do this, I can certainly go back, and if I've made it a little bit unclear for myself, a little bit of drawing doesn't help, or does, you know, can help a little bit there. Okay, so now we've got the image that we're going to draw. Now, how do we find the color here? Now, what I'm going to show you is a few little hacks here. So let's say I'm going to get rid of all of the drawing lines, so we see this here. And actually, I'm going to come back to this view. Maybe it's time to take a little sip. Okay. So now the goal is for you to learn how to do this by eye and eyeball all this stuff. But that's kind of tricky for new painters or people that don't have a lot of experience with paint, or even, to be honest, you know, artists that have been painting for a long time also struggle with matching color. Come on, there we go. Ah. So how do we find the colors in this image? Well, if you've got a computer, it can help you a lot. So I'll show you the hack that we can use. I'll show you the first way to do this using Photoshop, which is probably the more advanced way of doing it, and then I'll show you kind of a simpler way of doing it. So if I use Photoshop, I can bring this image into Photoshop, and then there's this tool called the eyedropper tool or the color picker tool, right? And I can go and hover around a color that I want to find. So maybe the first few colors that we're going to paint are going to be this, the table and the background, because we're going to paint the big areas first, and then we're going to slowly narrow into the details. Excuse me. That tea was went right to my head. So let's look for this. Actually, let's look for this here. So if I click on this, what it's doing is it's picked this color, right? And so this shows me where I am in the color wheel, right? So this is already giving me a lot of information. And again, I'm going to show you how to do this with free software that is on the web. But right here, this is telling me that its overall color is a cool blue hue, right? If it was a warm blue, it would be over here, right? Because this is what we learned in the first few episodes when we were mixing the color wheel, right? Where you have two different blues. So this would be your warm blue, and this is your cool blue, right? So let's just pick this color again, right? So this is a cool blue because it's close to the green, right? It's between green or it's between the cool blue is verging towards the yellow. So there's almost a greenish quality. And then it's also been, looks like a little bit of gray in there. So there's some tone that's been introduced, right? So otherwise it would be like this. This would be the full saturated color, but instead it's down here. Okay, so I can use, let's say I'll just do this again, and then I can go in here up to copy the colors hex code, which you don't really need to know what that means at all, but if I've got that hex code, I can go, let's say over here, this is a website, canva.com, not canvas, but Canva, I don't know why. I guess they didn't get the domain name reserved. Anyway, oops, I'm going to cut and paste this in here. So again, this can help me identify where is on the color wheel. Like, oh, okay. So again, this is in the cool ranges of blue, right? So, because it's, look how close it is to the greens. If this was a warm blue, it would be somewhere around here, right? And you can see the whole background color changes. And the warm blue kind of has a bit of a reddish quality, right? So this would be your saturated blue and your cool blue. And so our color was somewhere right up here. So I can just paste that again. And this is the color. So this kind of tells us where we are in the color wheel. And we know that it's not the fully saturated cool blue, like look how icy cold this is, but it's been muted by adding some tone in there, right? And that was the whole episode we did right before this was on tints, tones, and shade, and modifying your color with different values, right? Adding white, gray, and black. So this tells us it's been modified rather than fully saturated on the outside of the color wheel, right? Again, these are the outside colors that are full saturated color. Our color is going to be somewhere, you know, toward coming into this area here, right? So it's a little bit of a dirtier color. Okay, so let's, that was the kind of the pro way that you could do this if you didn't know how to find the color on your own, or you had some questions and you were kind of doubting what color it would be. Another way to do this is, and I'll put this is, I just did a Google image search, online color picker. And this is one of the things that I found here because I wanted something I could upload a picture to. So I've already uploaded the picture. All you would do is just choose file. And you can see this is a screenshot. I just took a screenshot from the gallery's website, you know, and then I uploaded it to this website. And this allows me to drag this kind of cursor around, and you can see these things kind of moving around down here. Right, so again, if this display is a little bit, maybe I'll explain how this display works again as well. So this is similar to a color wheel in that but instead of a color wheel, it's sort of a color bar, right? So we have warm red at the top, orange, yellow, so warm yellow, cool yellow, and if I go up here, I can show you how that, right? So we go again here. So warm red, orange, warm yellow. There's cool yellow, green, blue, green. We go into cool blue, icy cold blue, and then we're getting warmer blue, warmer blue, warmer blue, warmer blue, nice and deep warm blue, ultramarine blue. And then we start going into the purples, right? And here we've got a nice bright purple, lavender color. And then we go into magenta, which are the cool reds, cool red, hot pink, you know, fluorescent pink, cool red, and then back into warm red. So it's kind of like you're going all the way around the circle, right? So if we click on this color picker again, it's telling us that this is the saturated version of the hue, right? So if I took it all the way up to the corner, this would be the right on the outside edge of the color wheel, so it'd be really kind of super cold. But it was, let's say I'll go back down here, any of these here. So we can see that it's been modified with some gray, right? If it had only been modified with white, it would be up on this top area. So we would know, oh, all I got to do is add white to that cool blue, and I'm ready to go. It's going to be a bright. So this, you know, because as we go here, it gets very, very just pure white. And as I go back here, it's the saturated color. If there was only shades and it was just black mixture in here, and I drew this down here, it gets darker and darker and darker with darker shades of that color, so more and more black. But again, when we drop this down, we see that it's in the middle between white and black, meaning there's gray in there. So in other words, we have a cool blue, right, that's been modified with some gray to make a tone, right? So that tells us that's already one problem solved. So we know this bottom here is a cool blue. And then again, if we go up here and we look at this background, so this background, if we were to go all the way up to here, so this is a little bit trickier because this is it's technically a cooler yellow, but it is pretty much on the line between cool yellow and, or sorry, this is technically a cool red. So it's technically in between the magenta, right, which is the coldest red, and the warm red. So you can see it was somewhere right around in here, that area. So it's kind of in between. If I look at my color wheel again, so technically it's in between these two colors here, right? So then it's sort of like, which color do I want to use? I can mix the warm and the cool red together to kind of get in there, but one of the things that we are going to work with a little bit today is we're going to use warm and cool colors to create some depth. So my recommendation is that we're going to use some cool red in the background for this painting. Now, again, this is the surefire, no doubt 100% accurate way to do this, right? So if you're really struggling, you can't figure out what color is what, you could take a picture. You can do I could take a selfie photograph of myself right now, a picture of my dog or my daughter or my wife or a mountain, or it could be anything. I can upload it to this website and then use this tool to find the different colors that are in there to help me mix them correctly, right? So, because there's always people that are gonna argue with me and say, no, I think this is a warm or cool color. I go, well, why don't we just see for real what it actually is? The other thing here, so while we're just right here, we might as well look at a few other colors really quickly. This, this is the tablecloth, I guess. Is a cool blue that's been toned down a bit. And then if we go up to the tablecloth here, it's virtually the same color, but it hasn't been modified. There's less gray in it, so maybe a little bit of white in there. Okay. This, the strawberries, which all look to be the exact same color, and that's one of the reasons why I picked a print to use, is the colors are simpler. Right, so if we look in the strawberry, it's a much warmer red. So it's a warmer red than this. Right now we can see the difference between this little bit cooler red, closer to a magenta, versus this warmer red. And then of course we got an orange, and this orange, it looks like it's almost right out of the tube. So it's a pretty bright orange. And then, got another little green in here. So this green, if we went all the way here, would be like this super neon green, but it was somewhere back in here. Again, we'll come back to look at this here in a moment. But let's start this painting. So let's go to the studio here, and we're going to start mixing some colors. So from this point on, this is the hour that we're going to spend actually painting. So I know some people are like, well, the video is an hour and 40 minutes long. But you say in the thumbnail that it's one hour to complete the whole painting. Well, we haven't actually been painting right now. I'm also teaching you a little bit about how color works. So let's I'm going to move the canvas out of the way momentarily, and let's now put some paint onto our palette. Maybe you've already done this. Again, I found, maybe we're just going to back that out a bit. Okay. Putting these labels on here, I think, might help. It might help people at home who are watching and need, getting sometimes a little confused when I take my brush and I start painting with one color. Like, wait a minute, what color is that? But it might also be something helpful for those of you at home to have some kind of label on it. And again, remember, I labeled my paints. It, wears off as I rub on these things, and but it's just so I remember, because I want to be able to do this without having to do too much thinking, right? I want to be able just to look down and go, okay, warm blue, this is where the warm blue is. Because at this moment, my palette is nice and clean, right? There's not a lot of paint on it, and yeah, it's super obvious. Of course I know which one is the warm and blue, like, no problem. Once I've been painting for an hour and there's color all over the place, you're like, okay, wait a second, which one was which again? So it may benefit you guys to also find a way to mark up your color wheels. Those of you that are painting with some parchment paper or wax paper, which I have around, I think it's on the shelf over there, but if you have wax paper, you could literally put your original color wheel down onto the table and cover it. Now this is obviously plastic, but I could just wrap. I mean, I could try to use saran wrap. I think that would be a real pain, but you could just put it right over top, and you'd see a ghosted image of those colors below, and that might also help you to sort of remember where things are and where your colors are. I'm always about trying to find how can I simplify this process to make it easier. Okay, so I got my paints on here. I am going to use a bit of a larger brush to get going, because we're going to fill in a bunch of space kind of quickly here. So I want to have something a little bit larger that I can use. And I got my water. I've got a rag somewhere. I've got a couple towels in case something disastrous should happen. So I'm all ready. We're all ready to go here. So let's move the canvas up here. Maybe I'll do a little bit of color mixing. And okay, so let me bring this previous view back up. All right, you know what? Let's move it over. Okay, so we got this overhead view here. Okay. So let's say we're going to paint the background, this image, this area in behind here. That's going to be our first step, is to get that color in there. Just for the sake of cleaning things up. Okay, so what I want to do, I'm going to mix maybe that color, let's say right around in here. And so I'm just going to get my brush and get loaded up with a little bit of, why did I put my cool, look at me. I wasn't even thinking, see? Okay, so this is the first time I've done this, and for whatever, see, this is why oh my goodness, what was I thinking? Anyway, I'm sure there's a few people going like, wait a second. Yeah. Kit Kat says, you mixed up the cool red and cool blue. So, I'm just trying to see if everybody's paying attention. That's my ultimate goal here. Michael. I'm just opening up this paint. How did I do this lesson without my white paint last week? How did I get oh, I think I just took the lid right off. Okay. So, I'm actually just going to use another tray here. That's a quite dark tray, isn't it? Let's see. I like to have lots of little containers around here as I'm painting. So I'm going to put some white on there. And I'm going to put... I didn't open this one either. Weird. Okay, there we go. My goodness. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of black and just squeeze that. Now, like we did last week, that black is going to change the color really quickly. So I've got my cool blue, so I'm actually going to paint the tablecloth first. So I'm going to take this blue and I'm going to mix it in here and add some white to it. And then I can look at this color, right? And let's say I hold it up as close as possible to the computer screen here. Now, look at that color. Do they match? Kind of, but not quite there. Right? Because remember I said we got a little bit of gray in here, not just white, which would be a tint. So I'm going to add a little bit of black here. Right, so I'm just going to mix this into my color a bit. A little bit more. It's going to change that color pretty quickly, you can see. And let's just hold this over here. So again, I'm getting closer, but it's still not right. So what am I missing? Well, this has a little bit of cool yellow in here. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this yellow and add it to my mixture. I want to be careful not to put too much in there or it's going to start going really green really quickly. And then let's bring it over right there. So look how, it's not exactly correct, and the purpose of today's lesson is not to make perfect colors, but we are pretty darn close. As my grandfather, dearly departed grandfather, used to say, good enough for government work. I always thought that was the funniest thing. I didn't understand what it meant when I was a little kid, but okay. So I'm just going to start painting in here. And you can see I'm painting pretty much right up to and on top of some of the my pencil lines, because I want to try to hide the canvas as much as possible. Okay, now, I'm looking at my color and it looks a little bit darker than I was hoping for it to be. So I'm just going to put a little more blue in here. And then I can kind of give it a little bit of zazz back in there. That color I mixed would probably work really well for my shadows. So, I was going to set a timer for myself, so I'm just going to get my clock out here. And let's see. Oops, stopwatch. Just so, because I really do want to see if we can get as much of this done as possible within this allotted time. You also see that I'm mixing as I go. I'm not mixing a giant batch of one color and then painting with it, both because I realized pretty quickly that I needed, it wasn't the right color when I start painting it, so I didn't want to have a mixture that wasn't useful anymore. And the other reason is that, sorry, this is probably making a little bit of a racket. The other reason is that every time, if I have to mix my colors each time, it's really going to force me to really learn how to mix colors well, right? If I have to keep on mixing these colors over and over again, then I'm going to get better and better at the subtlety of color mixing. And I also prefer it because I like paintings that have a little bit more variety and variation in the color rather than kind of one solid color. So you can see this is a little bit darker over here if I want. Again, I can just add a little bit more blue in here and just brush it right over top. Another little trick that I like doing is I often find the edge of the painting is kind of neglected. So I like just to pick up the painting and just kind of go right along the edges. Now, of course, if you're painting on your kitchen table or whatever, just keep in mind that if you don't have a cloth or anything there protecting your table, doing this is potentially going to get paint all over the place. So okay, again, this is also a little bit of a bright, or the image on the left is going to be brighter anyway than this here below. So this is, I've got part of the color started. And I can also lighten it up or darken it later on if I'm really unhappy with it, right? So if I've got this, you know, and I think I actually will put this shadow in here right now because it's kind of a darker color. Since I've got this paint on my brush right now, I'm going to add more black into this. Get a little more blue back on my brush. Make sure I got still some white on there. Add a little bit of yellow in there again. And then let's brush this into the bottom down here. So really what I'm mostly interested in is trying to kind of cover up as much of the white as possible. Right? And you'll see that, you know, again, I'm working quickly. You know, most of the time I don't make paintings that take 1 hour. Often they spend weeks and weeks on them. So we're not, at this point particularly, we're not looking for perfection. What we are trying to do, though, is kind of practice a few of the principles we've learned, how to mix color and how to match color a little bit, right? And again, this is already appears to be a little much darker than the original. I think I probably could have put a lot more yellow in there, but I'm just going to keep on moving forward, because I could spend hours and hours trying to match these colors. I'm not really so interested in spending my time in that way. Is there anything else I want to do? You know, there is this other shadow here. Should I do that right now? Hey, why not? Let's do that. I'm going to put a little more black on my brush. Scooping a little more black up here. And then I'm just going to paint this. I think it was kind of some kind of shape like this. Now, I'm actually going to lighten this inside. I'm going to paint this blue as well, but I'm going to lighten it up. So my brush right now, I just painted this darker area. And, you know, I probably should have painted the plate first because it's always easier to lighten a color than it is to darken a color. But anyway, so I'm just going to rub some of this paint off. Right, so I'm just kind of cleaning it, but I'm not going to dip it in water because I don't need so much. Because I still like this kind of the tone that I've got. So that's some yellow in here. Let's get some more blue on the brush. And then I'm going to paint this in here. And I'm not too worried about the shape of my of this dish, or you know, really kind of getting everything correct. And one of the great things about acrylic paint is, you know, I just painted that, what, 5 minutes ago, the lighter shadow or the reflection underneath here, and it's already dry enough that I can drag this brush across. And I'm not using a lot of paint here, by the way. Like my brush, you know, just the way that I'm painting this painting right now, my brush is like, you know, just enough that I can kind of paint a small area, and then I can go back and get more on my brush. Now this area right here is freshly painted, so I just want to be a little bit careful that I don't pick too much color. Like, you see how when I'm taking it, it's kind of brushing some of that color up onto my brush is sucking some of that color up. So I just want to be careful that if I'm painting really wet on wet, that, you know, this darker color doesn't so-called contaminate the original, or the color that I'm painting with, or I intend to use. Okay, so there's this. I think I'm pretty satisfied with this so far. So I am gonna just rub the paint off here, and I'm going to wash my brush. So I'm curious to where everyone is at the moment. Kit Kat says, just change the labels. I could, but then that would kind of mess my my color wheel up a little bit. I don't know why I did that. You know, it's one of those things where I'm talking away while I'm doing something, and it's like chewing gum and walking at the same time. You're like, I hope I'm not going to trip and fall flat on my face, but probably will happen a few times. Okay. So we're going to work on the background, and then we're going to come down here and start painting the inside of this cake. So again, a really important thing that we're doing right now is we're not worrying about details. Like you see, I'm working on big shapes, and I think the number one sort of pitfall that beginner artists fall into is they get really obsessed with the details right off the bat. Like, I bet you if I just said, okay, let's just do a test and see how you guys do this, I bet you there would be a bunch of people that would start right up here where the green leafy part of the strawberry would be. Like, oh, I'm going to mix that because I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to paint this strawberry here and the little dots on there. And then after 45 minutes, we've got maybe 3 strawberries painted. And you're like, wow, this is going to take me weeks to finish this thing, right? So by working on these big areas first, we can kind of we can accomplish a lot really quickly, and there's a little bit more satisfying when you start feeling the canvas is filling up. It just feels like you're accomplishing things, and you also just feel like you've gotten further quicker, right? So it's like you got a big head start. Anyway, let's move to what should be the cool red here, right? So I got them backwards. So we're going to put the cool red in the background. So again, we are going to put some cool red on our brush. And maybe I'm actually going to mix some of this right here so I don't have this crinkling pan here. So I'm just going to take a big scoop of the white and mix this here. So that's nice and candy color, but a little bit too bright. So here's some black. I'm going to squeeze some of that off my brush because it's pretty dark. And this just is toning this color from the tint down to a tone. And then let's look at our image again. So if I hold my brush up here, and this is the super scientific way of doing things, by the way. So I'm actually pretty close, pretty much right out of the tube. I've got this magenta that I've put some tone into. I just think it needs a little more magenta going on in there. And I'll just try to compare that. It's a little bit brighter. Let's just start putting it in here. So yeah, it does look a little bit brighter. So I'm just going to get a little bit of black in here. And darken it down. Oh, it still looks a little bit bright. Okay. I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add just a little bit of some blue into this mixture. And that's going to make it not only a little bit darker, it's going to go a little bit more towards the violet, the purple. All right, so rather than adding more and more black here, I'm going to add a little bit of that pink. And now I'm going to go right over top of where that green leaf is. Just painting right in. I want to try to kind of overlap or at least, because I'm trying to get rid of that white of the canvas. And again, I can pick this up and just make sure I'm kind of covering that nicely. It's just because especially if I'm using thicker canvas, it sort of drives me nuts when I see the edge of the paintings. I remember when I was in art school, I would obsess over that, and every once in a while, some instructor would notice, and oh, you really, pay attention to the sides of the painting. And it's because I think I much prefer unframed paintings, or at least my own paintings unframed. Now, I would say a lot of the times when people buy my art, they take it and immediately get it framed, which it's their artwork now, right? So you can do whatever you want with it. But I just I like maybe that's because in my studio most of the stuff is unframed, so it just sort of is the way that I see it. But when I show in galleries, they often will get things framed. I'm like, whatever you got to do to sell it, I make it, you can sell it. That's where my expertise ends and yours begins. Okay, so here's my painting so far. So this would be a good point of time to take a second. We're 15 minutes in, so we're like a quarter of the way into the painting. Now, if I wanted to make any changes to the background color, this might be a great time to do some of that stuff. If I wanted to, like I just put my paintbrush on my painting for some reason. If you had to kind of fix a little area, that would be a good time to do that as well. So I'm going to, let's just take another quick look at the image. It looks like there could be a few small places where I could still use this color, but I think it's a relatively simple color to mix again, so I'm just going to clean my brush. And let's see, what color do I want to put in next? Well, I've got some red and I've got some orange that I want to use in here, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some red and then I'm going to use some orange in that order. So this, if I get some red on my brush, so sorry, this is my warm red. I'm using the correctly labeled color now. So I'm just going to see, I can even just, you know, take it and plop it down right here. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of space for the what do you call it, the green on there. But for the stem or the leaves, or I don't know what it's called, but right, so I'm just going to plop that right on top. And do I like the way it looks? I think so. It looks kind of nice so far. So I'm just going to keep on using this. This is right out of the tube. If I wanted, I could modify it. I could maybe make it a little bit less bright red. And I did put a big glob of paint just now, so that's something to be a little bit mindful. I don't want to put too much paint down because it's going to make it hard to do any painting over top of. Now these strawberries, I'm probably not going to paint too much on top of, except maybe a few of those little spots, or the seeds, or actually what are those things? Those are seeds, I think, on the strawberry. Those little crunchy bits that give it that kind of unique texture. So, and you can see there's a little bit of the background showing up. Now I can easily kind of, as I go later on, kind of paint that back again. I could put in a whole new background color in if I wanted. Okay, again, I'm trying to just cover as much of the white as possible. We will learn a number of different techniques that artists use to cover the canvas, one of which would be just do a big wash over the whole, or what's called a wash, which is sort of like, it sounds like you're kind of washing the canvas and staining it with a particular color right off the top. Okay. Now, I am going to kind of go, I wasn't planning on it, but since I'm already in this area, I can already kind of start playing around with painting some of these other red areas in here. So, again, you can see I'm simplifying things. I'm giving myself permission to make some changes here, so if I'm allowed to do it, you are allowed to do it. Right? I'm just gonna, because our goal is not to reproduce these paintings exactly and then to make counterfeit copies that we're gonna sell, right? But to use her art as inspiration for our own art, which I think she would be really pleased by. I think the little that I know of her, you know, I think she would be quite satisfied to know that, you know, in 2020, there are some people all over the world who've been so inspired by her art that they are making their own versions of them. Which reminds me, you know, after we're done, it would be really cool to see all of your versions of the paintings. You know, if people took pictures of them and then posted them somewhere on Facebook or YouTube, or not YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then you could tag me in the photo, and that way I can find them, and then next week I can show them all together side by side make a big kind of grid of all of the beautiful paintings you guys have made. All right, so I'm just, there's no particular rhyme or reason to what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of taking a little bit of a look at the original and just kind of adding these little strawberry blobs in here, and that kind of looks pretty good. Again, the great thing with acrylic paint is if I'm not happy with something, I'll just let it dry and then I'll paint some white right over top of it, and it's like it was never there. You know, I'm not super happy with the background colors that my first colors that I painted myself. I feel like I could have, if I spent a little more time, I could have made a better mix there, but I'm just going to keep moving forward, and that's what I would suggest you do as well. Okay, so here's some of that red that I've put in there. I think now I'm going to mix some of the orange for the actual bready part of this shortcake. So to do that, I am going to mix my, warm red with my warm yellow, because we had a kind of a nice warm, warm color. And let's see, it looks like it's a lot more yellow than red. So it means I'm just going to kind of abandon this one here and just kind of move a little bit closer and just keep soaking up more yellow. Alright, so once I've got that, then I'm going to start just kind of putting it all over in this area here. And I can paint over top of some areas. You know, maybe your brush picks up some of the red that was there before, and you're like, oh no, it's getting gross and messy. All is lost. Oh, I'm just gonna give up and take up the violin instead. Okay. Give me 1 second here. My overhead camera just gave out. Amy? Amy? Can you bring me an ice pack, please? Okay. So I forgot to bring myself an ice pack for the area above there. Thank you, love. So this poor camera, all the hot lights down here is causing it to overheat. So let's do. While I wait for that to come back, I'll just put this up here. So basically where I am is I'm just painting some orange into that area, you know, right in here. And I'm not even worried about getting these kind of little marks or drips of strawberry juice in there. Let's see, that. Do we have? There we go. Okay. So bring this back down there. Okay. So I'm painting Shortcake. I love painting. It just feels so like liberating and fun, and such a strange material, isn't it? Like, I don't know, there's something so unique and strange about paint. Okay, so Now there are a few little areas that have some of this exact color in there, but this wasn't too hard for me to mix, so I am... you know what? Why not? I'm going to find... I was going to say we could save this for later, but, you know, we got an hour to make this whole painting, so I'm 26 minutes. So you know what? Now there's no time to fuss. I'm going to take my brush, and I've loaded it up with that same color, and I'm just going to go in here and start kind of putting a few lines. Now the first thing I notice is putting this color over this darker background immediately makes this orange look darker than this orange. I can try to add a little bit of white to my mixture. I'll just turn this around. Right, I can add a little bit of white. The one thing that's going to happen though is now I don't have this exact same orange. I've got a bit of a tint. Right, so it's going to be slightly different color, less saturated. If I wanted to do this a little bit more accurately, then I could have painted around and left this kind of blank, but that would have taken a lot more time to do. So I am just gonna, I'm kind of putting some random lines on here. I'm not being too concerned. This whole area down here is, you know, the reflections from, it looks like a kind of a clear plate, right? And so it has some sort of pattern on there, so she's sort of playing with that, and you know, I think it looks super beautiful. So I'm just going to simplify things. I'm putting a few of these little lines under here. Right, because these, I guess, intended to be the reflections of the shortcake in the bottom down here. And there are a few of these lines on here. Now I'm going to go right through here. Oop. Now we could spend quite a while trying to get a really nice, accurate, super sharp, clean line in here. And you know, I'm kind of the first person to obsess over that kind of thing, but I'm just going to keep on moving forward. So, or I will, if I can break away, right? So there's that. Let's get a few more. I'm going to darken it ever so slightly and make a bit of a, look how quickly that changed. Woo! Woo! Oh my goodness. And put a few lines underneath here. You know, I'm riffing a little bit off of her original painting, so you know, it's like I'm a cover band in a restaurant, taking her song and giving it my own little spin. You know, I've got this color. I'll just sort of put it in a few other little places here. In fact, there is a little bit of a shadow under here, and so I'm just going to, I've mixed this kind of darker orange, and I see there is a little bit of that, so I'm just going to take it and throw it in under here, under these strawberries. And I'll be honest, like, once I start going, I kind of stop really looking too carefully at the original, which probably is going to drive some of you absolutely nuts, but I'm not obsessed about copying anything. I just want to paint, really. I want the pleasure of painting. That's why I'm doing these entire classes to begin with, because it sort of gives me an excuse to actually get a little bit of painting done. Okay. So I think I've got all of the stuff I want with this brush done. For now, anyway. I certainly could come back and mix colors and do it again. And in fact, what's kind of nice about mixing a color and then painting and washing your brush and coming back is that the color you mix again is not going to be exactly the same, which can drive some people nuts. But I like that variety. I like that there's little changes happening throughout the painting, and that it's not just like this print. Everything in the print is very solid, flat colors. If I wanted that look, then I'd be teaching a printmaking class. We're learning about painting, and painting, one of the qualities, like it or not, about painting that makes, I think, painting so great is that variety, is the kind of, there's a bit of a chance element to things, at least when you're starting. It kind of matching colors can be really difficult, if not seemingly impossible for many people. And rather than fighting that, let's kind of embrace that a little bit, right? Let's, again, like, try not to be so hard on ourselves about having to match all the colors and make it perfect. Okay. So I'm just taking a quick look at the comments here while I'm tootling around. And okay, so I'm gonna put some paint in this area here, so the so-called white here, but I don't want it just a pure white. In fact, oops, let's see. Let's go back here. Where's my other view? So I'm going to put a little white onto my palette. And even just rather than painting pure white in there, I want to put some white and just, let's say, a little tad bit of the warm yellow. So the color is just like we did last week when we were making these tints of the yellow. You know, it's I want one that is almost white, but not white. So I can use this color to kind of go in here and clean up some areas. And I can always paint pure white back over top of it. But it's just, I don't know, I just want something that's just giving it a little bit more life and color, you know, rather than just leaving this blank part of the canvas there. So, you know, I'm going to come in and around some of these things here. And that white is also going to be really great at covering. So, you know, I could use this if there was areas I was unhappy with. I could use this same color just to kind of paint right over top of things. And I can kind of clean up things. You can see I'm just sort of kind of going up and around. Oh, let me go back to the painting there so you can see that. Okay. So this, if I do end up putting actual white, or I really do need white in my picture, this will kind of help give some separation there. It'll look more, it'll look white. I'll be very noticeable that there's some white in the picture. So, oh, I guess that was a darker color, but that's all right. We'll put a darker color in there too. What else do I... maybe I'm going to take this same color. It might be a little bit intense if I try to put it right in here. So I am going to put a little bit of warm blue. That was quite a lot. And I'm going to mix this warm blue. So again, I just took from my warm blue just a little tad there. And so this is going to just acting a little bit like black, darkening that color down just a bit. And then I can paint this, you know, some of these little stripes and things that are, you know, I'm just going to paint some random lines and shapes into these areas right here. If you wanted, you could put in secret messages and codes, which artists are famous for having done, right? There's lots of artists who, you know, if you think about 500 years ago, artists, you know, their only client really was like kings and queens, you know, the very rich, of which there weren't that many. You know, they were basically kings and queens. And you had, you know, the head religious figures of whatever community or culture, right? So, and those individuals didn't want pictures of your cat or your dog or the lunch you had. They weren't interested in your selfies, right? They could care less about your Instagram feed back then. I mean, obviously there wasn't an Instagram feed, but they would probably be quite disgusted with our Instagram feeds today. Anyway, they were interested. They wanted either portraits of themselves painted, or portraits of, you know, their own cats and dogs, or their estates, the places that they lived or owned. There was quite a, especially in Holland, there was quite active. Painters would often be commissioned to paint kind of like your food images. That, you know, if somebody had like a gigantic banquet for, you know, they were trying to entertain, you know, maybe it was for a wedding, they would hire an artist to come in there and paint, you know, all the food stacked up onto the table, you know, like the pig with the different birds that they'd gone hunting for, and so forth and so on. And but artists, you know, tend to be kind of a little bit mischievous characters, and often what they would do is they might do things like put ants in there eating the food, or bugs that were, you know, contaminating the meat, and, you know, just as things that you might not see at first, but were kind of maybe their own way of you know, putting a little inside joke in there, or taking a shot at the person that owned the or that hired them, or, and there's all sorts of symbolism in painting, so who knows. And some of those inside jokes are lost to history. We don't know exactly what kind of goofy things they were trying to do. I'm actually going to go back up to these leaves, and I'm going to paint a bit of the same color, that I'm using the same color, and I'm going to paint a little bit of underpainting here, so that way when I do paint this green, it's going to show up really nice and kind of bright, because that seems like a pretty important part of this picture. And again, you can see my version, well, I was going to say, isn't too close to the original, and I look up, it's not too bad, actually. Okay. Just want to check and see how we're doing time-wise here. Okay, so I have about 20 minutes that before I kind of like to bring this painting to a resolution. So maybe I'm going to put a few more lines down here into this darker area. So I'm going to I got some of this mixture. You can see it's now all dried in here, right? So I Gonna have to mix a little bit more of that. And I didn't even wash my brush, if you saw that. I just kept on going. So maybe I'll just even mix some of this right here. Get a little bit of black in there. And I'm going to paint a few of these kind of lines down in here. And I can just keep on adding more white in there to brighten it up. So now I'm kind of outlining this here. So I do want to make sure that it's a little bit darker than these up here, because it's technically kind of in the shadow. And, you know, I am really simplifying that image, right? I'm not too worried about getting all of these details correct. In fact, I'm putting a color that's not really in the original there. Maybe I'll put some red back in there as I go. Oh, we got some stuff going on in here. I also, you know, whenever I've got paint on my brush, I just sort of look around and think, like, where else can I apply this color that I've mixed? And I kind of want to just use it. You know, I've mixed it. Instead of just washing my brush, take a look around. Look at this. I can put a little bit here, and I can put a little bit there. Grab another color. Oh, this one's a little bit darker. The other thing I'm doing too is if I'm working on an area like this down here, it's giving this part of the picture up here a chance to dry, right? So it's sort of like I work a little bit down here and this area dries, and then by the time, you know, I'm kind of done here, I can kind of go back up and forth, and that just always serves me really well. Like that way I'm not kind of waiting around for paint to dry, which can be the most frustrating part of being an artist, right? Is you're just like, I really want to paint, but I gotta wait for this thing to dry, so because otherwise my colors are gonna get all mixed up as I go. Okay, I think I might try painting a few lines up here. I think this is kind of sufficiently dry. Looks like it's still a little bit wet. It's okay. Again, I can always come back around and add or change some of these things. One thing that I'm doing, maybe I'll just kind of show you here from the side, so you can see what I'm doing as opposed to just overhead, is I'm using my little pinky finger to kind of anchor myself. Obviously I want this area to be dry before I do it, but I kind of put this down, and then I can kind of, helps me when I'm painting over top so that my hand or my wrist isn't leaning on the painting itself below it. Okay, I'll just come back here so you can see the painting. Where else? We got a little bit of blue in here. That's pretty good so far. I think now I'm going to mix some of the darker red and start doing some of this area in here, maybe on the plate and then on the background, and then I'll come back around. I'll probably do that green on the top of the strawberry last. So I'm just going to clean my brush a bit. Nice and clean. You can see I've also, the other brushes I've used, I've also cleaned them. I don't have any brushes sitting on my table that are wet and are drying, and then the paint is drying in there and ruining the brush. Everything, unless I'm planning on using that brush within the next couple of minutes, I'm going to clean it. If I was using oil paint forever, I could leave them on the counter for a couple of months, go on vacation to Hawaii, and come back home and my brush would still be wet, right? Which is, depending on who you ask, the advantage or disadvantage of oil paints. Okay, now, what should we do? Oh yeah, we're going to do that darker red. Okay, so I'm going to use this warm red, and I'm going to add some warm yellow, because we're going to make a bit of kind of a bit of a brown here, because I know it looks kind of like a really dark crimson, like a kind of a dried blood kind of quality, right? So I'm going to add a little bit of blue in here, and whoop, look, now there we go. We start getting kind of a brown color. And so brown is basically taking orange and adding blue to it. Or you could think of like all three colors together are going to make this. So I haven't even put any black or white in there, which I could do, but well, let's just see how this looks for now. So I'm literally going to mix it and paint it on here. Okay, I think I do need to make it darker, so I'm going to add, let's see if I add some more blue in here. Okay, I think I'm going to add just a little bit of some white, and I had some black on there from before. Let's see how we're doing now. There we go, I'm a little bit darker. And you know, some of this this white yellow that I put down there wasn't fully dry, so I'm picking a bit of that up with my brush. I don't mind that so much. I could see why it could drive some people nuts, but I'm going to leave it there. I'm also going to leave a little bit of that white shining through. Okay. Take a little bit more black on here. Okay. Let's put some of the darker red. So I just added a little more black to this mixture just to kind of make to really define the darker edge. I got this darker area here as well. I'll paint that. And then I got this area underneath here. Okay, and you know, I got this color on my brush, and I think this color is going to work really well for putting some seeds on these strawberries. So I'm going to come in here and and maybe before I do, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to swirl it and spin it and then pull it towards me in order to try to get a nice sharp point. Right, so I've got that little point, and then however many little spots you want to put on here. Right, so let's see, there's a little division in between here of some, and I'm just going to clarify that a bit. Curious to know if people are painting on the table or if you're painting on an easel. You know, different artists have different preferences. Some people really like painting. I personally prefer painting on a table than painting at an easel. I don't know if it's probably not the best posture-wise. I just find I have a lot more control this way. I can kind of lean my hand on it. This is just the way I've been painting for the last couple decades, and it's worked really well for me. So I don't have any particular need to change things up at all at this point. So just adding a little bit more. So, you know, this is the part of making a painting that is my favorite part, is this time where, you know, all of the canvas has been filled in, and then we're just kind of now adding details and playing, really. Now I can sit here and add, you know, little spots here and there. I can make some decisions to change from the original, and if I like. So, do I need any more of this red anywhere? I think this is a little bit too dark, so I'm just gonna maybe take a bit of this off and just go to lighten it up a little bit to kind of get some of these areas in here. This, you know, doing a painting like this, you know, we're taking inspiration from the original, and I know that there's some people who would see the original painting and they're looking at their painting and they're just at their wits' end and upset with themselves that they have somehow failed, and, you know, it doesn't look like the original. Well, as far as I'm concerned, like, so what? Who cares what the original looks like? You know, you probably aren't going to hang the original side by side with your version, even if you do call up the Mirror Godard gallery and you buy the original print. Well, maybe if you do that, maybe you might want, depending on how good your version turned out, to kind of have them side by side. But you know, I'm not going to buy the original. Part of me making these paintings is like, oh, this is a way for me to make a whole bunch of copies of paintings I really like, and then I can have these, my you know, cheap knockoff alternative. But it's also just the fun of painting it. And as I do this, I start to kind of, I'm in my mind thinking about the original artist and, you know, her achievements. And, you know, she was one of the great Canadian artists. You know, she was, gosh, you know, when I think about it, at the time of her death, just a few years ago, she would have been one of the titans of Canadian art. You know, one of the last big artists that we had. She had been painting, you know, she was born in 1935. So her husband, Christopher Pratt, was also a very well-known artist, and he was, you know, at least kind of for a period of time, actually a very well-known artist, very famous artist. I don't really, I mean, obviously he's passed away years ago as well, but I don't hear people talking a lot about him these days. Whereas she has sort of maybe outlived him, and they both did paintings that were very similar, like these realistic, photorealistic kind of artworks. The difference is that they had children, and she stayed home and she raised the children. And so what's I think is really neat about her paintings is they're of these very domestic scenes. Like, she painted a lot of things in her kitchen, right? Because she spent a lot of time in the kitchen making food for all the kids. And so she would, you know, when the kids went to bed, she would make paintings, you know. So she was trying to kind of find her way to fit her art into her life. And I'm sure it was not easy. And they had, I think, a kind of a tumultuous relationship. And but you know, he made paintings of boats and planes and, you know, these very masculine kind of things, whereas she was kind of painting the things that were around her every day. And you know, they're very simple, humble things like jam jars or pickle jars, you know, like things that she was cooking that day. And I'm sure that's something a lot of us can relate to. You know, here we are, a lot of us stuck at home, and you know, we're thinking like, oh, I want to make a painting, but what do I make a painting of? Well, I can't get in my car and drive anywhere, or I can, but you know, I'm told not to stick around too long, or all these different kinds of things. And you know, artists like to use the excuse that they're not able to do anything because they don't have any, you know, inspiration. Well, she is probably, you know, if you're looking for somebody who had every excuse in the book not to make art, she had all of, you know, she could list 10 different reasons why she didn't have time or energy to paint, and or subject matter, you know, and she accomplished a lot regardless. So that's one of the reasons why I find her like a really inspiring artist. Okay, how are we doing for time here? Okay, so I'm at 58 minutes so far in this painting. You know, I'm doing a lot of fiddling around and painting some of these little areas. If I want, I could be pretty close to being done. I'm going to paint maybe some of the squiggles in the background and paint this green on top of here, and then I think I'll be pretty close to being done. What else do I think I need in here? Oh, I guess there's the oops, look at this cheap brush. It just came apart. Okay. So yeah, I'll probably be painting for another 10 minutes. I'll be definitely done within the next 15 for sure. So let's paint. There are other areas in here that I see as being kind of unfinished. You know, there's like little details in here that are going to drive me nuts, but let's just keep moving forward. So I want to get these squiggles in the background done. So let's mix a little bit of paint. I'm going to need some more cool red. I used it up last time. And I'm going to use, I got a little bit of black still on there. So this is my cool red, which looks a lot like my warm red when I put a little bit of black into it. All right, so I'm just going to give it some gray. And then, you know, I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason for how you want to do this. I'm just going to take, again, inspiration from her, and I need a little bit more black on there. A little more black, and I'm going to give it a little bit of cool blue, just so it's not totally dark. So it's a pretty dark color, but it's still got a little bit of life. Ooh, that's beautiful. I like that color. It's kind of a, I don't know what color that is. Yeah. So, you know, this is another thing too. You know, let's say I painted this background color and I didn't like the background color. Well, I could paint over it, or I could add a pattern over top of it that interacts with that color in some way. So it's not always necessarily about just erasing something, but you know, you can add to it and change it, modify it, rather than just kind of paint it right out and say that, I just made a gigantic mistake. I'm going to rotate my picture, which is one of the great things about being able to, about painting and being able to kind of change the orientation, whatever you have to do in order to get the marks on the page or the canvas is all right with me. Sounds like that should be a rock song. So, you know, just because, you know, we are limited by our range of motion with our bodies, and sometimes painting in a certain, you know, direction is super awkward and really difficult. So rather than trying to do something that is going to, you know, make you fall over, just turn your canvas a bit. Now again, you can see I am way off the deep end here. I'm just using her painting as inspiration for these little marks that I'm making, and you know, I apologize to you, Mary, if you feel like I'm butchering this background here, but I'm in a bit of a hurry and I'm having fun. You know, a question might be, you know, I just did it. Somebody might be looking at their picture and saying like, wow, I feel really happy about my picture. Can I sell it? What is the ethics of that? Well, when it comes to art, there's a long history of people making artwork inspired by other artists. You know, people like Van Gogh made lots of copies of other artists. Paul Cézanne made copies of other people's art. You know, it's in the same way that, you know, hip hop artists might kind of quote another artist in their song. Artists do that kind of thing all the time. Now, if you were to try to pass your artwork off as another person's artist, well, that's fraud, right? That's, you know, that's like trying to copy a movie and then make bootleg copies and selling them in a parking lot somewhere, right? Well, that's not legal. That's not cool. But if you acknowledge where the art originally came from, or that it's a copy, like some artists will, if you go to a museum, you might see something like after Cézanne, and that, you know, by so-and-so, and that just means that it's a painting that's been inspired or it's come after another artist. And I think it's really, every once in a while, there's museums will exhibit the original painting next to a copy, and it's cool to see how different artists have kind of gotten inspired by one another. And, you know, culture is a living thing, and I don't believe that it should just, you know, be locked away, and that, you know, copyright has its uses for sure. I wouldn't want somebody making my paintings exactly the way I do them, and then making money off of it, and then me going broke because, you know, somebody's making my own paintings and selling them. But if somebody is taking ideas that I'm using and making it their own, I would find that really flattering. You know, they say, what is it? What is the highest form of flattery? I can't remember my my overused quotes. My imitation. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. And Picasso, as always, has got some kind of quote about that. I can't remember what he says. Like, he says something. If you were to do an internet search for quotes by artists on copying, you'll find plenty of humorous responses to that. Okay. I don't even really know what this looks like from the other side, but I'm just going to keep on going, and I have faith that all these kind of little brush strokes, and I could be doing this much faster too. Like if I really, really, really wanted all of these kind of things, I could kind of dash off. But one of the things that kind of drives me nuts about paintings, usually student paintings, is, you know, somebody might spend a lot of time, let's say, on painting somebody's face, and it's just gorgeous, and then the rest of it is just slapdash, and that, I think, is like, oh, so you're telling us that the only thing that's really important about this picture was the face, and then the rest of it is kind of just an afterthought. And, you know, I think of that in the same way I might think of like a movie where, you know, it's got a really great beginning, or the trailer is really great, and then the rest of it is just sort of like everyone was phoning it in. You know, I think ideally you want to not necessarily treat every part of the canvas the same, but to give it the same level of attention, right? So that everything, so again, like I'm going to come in here, and I know we're just about done, but paint a little bit of this area because there is that really cool feature of the cloth that I like. But right now, it's kind of an afterthought. There's nothing happening in there. So I'm going to come back and work in that area. Okay, so I think I'm going to paint the green on the top of this thing falling apart there. It's pretty funny to me. I think I'm going to choose a different brush that is still intact. So anyway, if you are enjoying these classes, I would love it if you were to like and subscribe to my channel. There's the link for that in the description. Or you can like and subscribe. There's sort of kind of right below the screen that you're watching right now. You can also leave a small PayPal donation. I've been very lucky and honored to be supported by so many of you who are leaving, you know, small amounts and large amounts. I don't have any, you know, I think I'm really appreciative of the people who basically, it's like buying me a cup of coffee to say thanks. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to paint this green up here. Now, I'm going to choose a bit of a warmer green, just because I want it to be kind of forward. So I'm using the warm yellow and the warm blue to get this color. So it's not like a vibrant green. I'm gonna add a little bit of cool blue into the mixture as well, and that should make it pop a little bit more. So basically both blues, the warm yellow, I'm going to add a little bit of white now to this mixture. Okay. And you know, I feel like that's a little bit dull, so I'm actually going to cool it down. And there we go. Nice. I could leave a little bit of white space around some of these edges as the just like the print, but I'm going to keep on going here. Now this, if I wanted, I could add a little more white to it because it's a little bit transparent, and that kind of does drive me nuts. So that might be something I might have to wait for the canvas to dry a little bit before I can truly get in there. I mean, I could take some big gobs of paint and make that a little bit thicker just by painting thick, but which I'm doing right now, but I'm probably just never going to be happy unless I let that dry a bit. Okay, so my final thing that I'm going to do is just paint the cloth, and then I'm going to walk away. So that's just this area right over here. And I'm going to remind myself how I did that, right? So that was my cool blue with some white. There's a bit of red in there. I'm okay with that happening. And a little bit of this yellow, kind of a dirty mix going on in there. What are we doing here? So, see, basically I just mixed almost the exact color that was there. So I'm going to need to, I want it to be a little bit lighter. So I'm going to add a bit of this blue, just to make it kind of separate it enough here. Again, I'm not too concerned about the original image. Let's see. Still needs more white. Yeah, it needs a little more yellow too, doesn't it? Let's make this kind of greenier. Brighten her up. We need to go a lot more. Okay, so let's put a dab of white on there. So this will allow me to kind of clean up the edge between that magenta, dark magenta background. And then you can see, like, whoop, look at this line is kind of being a little bit crooked. So I'm going to waste a little bit of time trying to straighten that up, which is a bit of a lost cause. Ideally, I would have sorted that out in my drawing phase, but whatever. Okay. Whoa. This thing just keeps getting wider and wider as I keep goofing around to try to make that nice and straight. Ah, well. And then we got to these wavy. Now, ideally, I probably would have done, this would have been the original layer on the bottom, and then these kind of tassel-y things and the mat would have been done over top of it. So I'm kind of going a little bit backwards here. But, you know, you do what you got to do depending on how much time you got and, you know, whatever kinds of, however you originally approached the picture, so. That's what we're doing here. And you know, every artwork is a learning experience, and you know, as you work on a picture, you learn like what worked and what didn't, and you kind of have a bit of a debrief with yourself. You're like, okay, did that work? What do I have to do next time to make it better? You know, that angle is a little bit funky, right? So I could try to lengthen these guys up here. I'm going to shorten them a bit. Yeah. How's that? Good enough for government work? You know, again, I could continue really kind of fussing around with this picture until I make it absolutely perfect. But I think for, you know, an hour and some change of painting, that's something I feel pretty happy with this result, right? I think I'm going to call it a day here. You know, if you wanted, you could sign your picture. You can literally use a paintbrush, or you could use a pen. Probably a pen would be the least ideal. You could use a pencil. I often will sign on the back of the picture. So you could write on here, and of course I want to be careful not to put my canvas straight down, or I am going to get paint all over the place. I think there's no paint down here, so I'm actually gonna let's tilt this up here like that. Since the bottom is dry, I can kind of hold it like this, and I can write my name. So you would want to write your name, not my name here. What's today's September 29th, 2020. Strawberry shortcake after Mary Pratt. And there we go. So there's our first painting. I mean, we did do one of Sonia Delaunay a few weeks ago that we kind of did pretty quickly, but here's one that we've kind of started from beginning to end, and applying some of the principles. We learned a little bit about how to mix the colors, and really, if you really wanted the most accurate colors of all, I showed you how to do that at the very beginning of the episode. So yeah, look at that. 1 hour and a finished painting. So I feel like that's a pretty good use of my time. So thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in and watching. I'm going to take a quick second to look at some of the comments here, and I just remembered all of a sudden that I was going to show you guys some of the images that people did of that Sonia Delaunay painting, and I didn't do that. I promised I was going to do it at the beginning of today's episode. So that gives you a little bit of time. If you haven't sent your Sonia Delaunay picture, I would love to see that. or your color wheels. I'd love to see the version you did of this painting today. So again, send them to me by Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, either as a direct message, or you can post and then you can tag me. I'm on all of the social media. My links to those are down below. So because it'd be so cool, I'm super interested to hear what you've done, and I'll give you some feedback next class on how you could improve your picture, if you want my feedback on your artwork. It doesn't cost you a penny either. So I'm just going to quickly look through some of the comments. Wow, there's lots. Donna says she's from Champion, Alberta, in the county of Vulcan, Alberta. I'm originally from Calgary, so I know where you're talking about. I got tired of the human race, so moved here to live with the aliens. Yes. There's the big Star Trek Enterprise sculpture, public artwork out in Vulcan. Palash is from Fremont, California. Nice to see you, Palash. You were here first, as always. Linda is there. Hi, Linda. Susan says, hi, y'all. Or hi, all. I added the y'all, being from Calgary. Susan's from North Vancouver. Donna has a daughter that lives in North Van. Cool. What a small... We're forming this great little community together. Kit Kat's from London, Ontario. Hey, London, Ontario. That's my mom is from London, Ontario. I grew up partly in London, Ontario. Oh, Donna says my drawing course is awesome. Thanks, Donna, for the shout out. Yeah, it's all of those episodes are there for you to watch at your convenience. If you want to learn how to draw, then certainly you can watch all those episodes. Peter Lee says 40 drawing episodes, up 40 drawing down. Now on to painting. So Peter's been there through the whole journey. Thank you, Peter. It's great to see you again. And maybe one day we'll see each other in person again. Kimberly says, I use styrofoam plate and write what's right on the plate. Yes, that's when I've taught in class, for those of you that remember, I've used styrofoam plates. They work quite well. The only downside is they create quite the, like mess of garbage, when we have like 20 people painting in a room and each person's got 3 or 4 plates, we go through a lot of those plates. And so that's one of the reasons why I like to use a palette that, again, after today's class, I might try, I have that container where I can keep these paints nice and dry, so I might do that. But otherwise, I would kind of just wipe it off and then throw the rag in the garbage and then run this under the sink to clean it. It says, I like, Elo, you mixed up the cool and red. Oh yes, we got that. Yes, Amy says it'll be cool to see everyone's paintings. I would love to see, if you finish your painting, send it to me. I won't say your name if you don't want me to say your name. And they'll be next to dozens of other paintings by other people. So Peter says, if there will be a white space in the painting, is it customary to add white to that space or leave the canvas blank? It's up to different artists. If your canvas is white to begin with, then you could just leave it white. If there's errors or any mistakes you made, you could paint them out white. I would probably be inclined just to leave it blank. A lot of there's some paintings in behind there. I really like blank spaces on canvases, like the artist we're going to talk about next class, Henri Matisse. So maybe we'll talk a little bit more about blank spaces on canvas next class. Cynthia says, I don't know about anyone else, but my painting doesn't look like Michael's. Again, I've been painting professionally for 20 years, right? So if you went for a bike ride with, Lance Armstrong, the only cyclist I can think of, he might, go a little bit faster than you and be able to last a little bit longer. Not that I'm Lance Armstrong or that I'd want to be. I mean, I haven't taken performance-enhancing substances to help me with my painting, but I think you get the point, right? I've been at this for a little while, so I can probably do this a little bit more effortlessly than some of you that are just learning. But again, that's the point of doing this, is that if you were to paint this again 5 months from now, after we've done all 40 episodes, you're going to do a way better painting, way better version of this. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe one of the final episodes, we'll take one of the first ones, do it over again, and see how we do. And I'll do a better version of this the second time around, I guarantee, because now I've learned what worked and what didn't. I might, again, like I was saying, I probably would do the cloth differently the second time around. Like I was breaking this down in front of you in real time and trying to figure out how to do it. So now that I've done it once, I guarantee you I can do it better. Peter says, mine doesn't look exactly like the same, but it's definitely a painting of dessert. Good. Jen says, looks great, Donna. I paint a table as my hands shake so much to paint an easel. Yeah, I find, any kind of painting on an easel, like your arm is not supported. Now, somebody's going to write in, there are devices you can use there's these big sticks that you can rest when you're using an easel, but I just find I lose, like my wrist gets sore, my hand gets sore. Whereas this, I feel like I'm drawing or writing at a table. It's just a little bit more of a natural place for my arm to be. Cynthia says she's happy that she's not alone. I'm assuming with the quality of the painting or just being surrounded by a lot of other creative people. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. Yes, yes, beautiful. Another great night, says Kit Kat. See you Thursday. Sue says, thanks so much. Not sure my painting is photo worthy. Well, maybe you don't feel that way now. If you think about it, you just put it aside, like a lot of artists, just if you put your painting aside and you come back tomorrow, there might be things you want to add to it or change, and of course you're welcome to do that. The class is over for me, but if you want to continue working on it, you could. But I often find if I just sleep on a painting, not literally on top of it, but just let it sit there, I come back to it again the next day and think like, oh, all the things that I was, worried about or frustrated about have kind of gone away, and I just feel a lot better about it now that I see it again for a second. Gail says, mine doesn't look photo worthy either, but my husband says, don't look so close, stand back and look. Great point. Your husband is a very smart man. What I would do with this painting, and we didn't do it now, but I would, let's say, put it on a shelf and just let it rest there, and then kind of standing back and then looking at it, because it's going to look different here than it is here. I've got lights shining down on it, so I already look at it and I see like, wow, it's actually a lot brighter than it was when I was down here, because I'm actually kind of painting looking at the monitor as well. So it's going to look very different upright than it is going to look down, which is one of the reasons why people like painting on easel, of course. Sue says, could we get a heads up of the next painting? Maybe I could trace a drawing. I'm going to, like we did today's class, show you how to draw that picture. We're going to be painting artwork by Henri Matisse, and there's an image of it in the description. If you just Google Henri Matisse's goldfish, you'll find it. Maybe I'll do that for you just really quickly here. But I think, and then we'll wrap up here. So I'll just kind of show you. This is one of my favorite paintings too, and so this is the image that we're going to paint next week. So if you did want to get a head start and do an underdrawing to begin with, you could. Again, I'm going to show you guys how to do it as well. You can see it's a big painting. Ours is going to be much smaller, and we'll do that in an hour on Thursday. So, having said all that, thank you everybody again for a great episode. I feel like super energized. I feel like after I get a little bit of painting done, I'm like, I want to get on my treadmill and do a bit of running. I hope my wife isn't listening so she calls me on it, but... Okay, everybody, we'll see you in a couple of days. Thanks for painting with me. I wish you a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.